If you watched our last video, you hopefully learned how to spark up your own lagging motivation. Now it's time to shift our focus outwards to understand how to motivate the people that we lead and work with. Now, if you don't know much about leadership and motivation, you tend to oversimplify it with something like, I don't know, it's not that hard to motivate people. You just tell them what to do and they do it. While that's not wrong, it is one of the more primitive ways to think about leading people because you're basing your entire approach on the assumption that people don't do their jobs properly because they're simply unclear about what to do. Now, that very well may be the case, but it's typically not the whole story. There are a long list of factors inside of each one of us that determine what we do and how well we do it. Putting aside most of these factors, I will cover each one in a separate video. We are going to isolate and focus on perhaps the most influential lever at your disposal to get the most out of others. If you understand motivation and you learn how to use the tools that we present in this video seamlessly, you will develop yourself into an exceptional leader. So let me show you just how to do that. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Careers and Companies on the Upmarket channel. My name is Larry, and I guess this is the second of a two-part mini-series on motivation. This one is on how to motivate others. Now, a video like this is exceptionally relevant to anyone who wants to be seen as a strong leader, or if you want to be a good teammate, or even if you want to learn how to manage upwards effectively. But I am in particular reaching out to those of you who are stuck in that space of thinking, why do I need to motivate people? They should just come into work and do their jobs. We feel that way a lot. But on this channel, we call that demandingness, where we simply demand that the world be different and according to our expectations. But that really is a path to nowhere. You simply need to be much more active as a people leader. And as I have been preaching on this channel right from the beginning, employment relationships are a two-way street. So it's true, we should expect employees to bring their best selves to work every day. But no single employee has the ideal combination of personality, self-concept, emotions, attitudes, knowledge, all the things that we presented to you in the Mars model to be able to do their job perfectly every time. So it's on you as a leader to rewire any incorrect ingredients and top up the ones that are missing to drive performance. That is what we call management. And you should expect to do that every day. And if you do that, the behaviors become much more automatic and your job becomes easier. All right, let's get going. But first, a few fundamentals, starting with what is motivation. Now, we did cover that in the last video. Here's a quick recap. Motivation involves the actions you take that creates a force inside others that inspires voluntary behavior with direction, intensity, and persistence. Again, you can check the last video on motivating yourself where we go into that in a little more depth. Now, what is it that we want to motivate? In the video where we introduced the Mars model, we identified 5 important workplace behaviors that we want to inspire. The first is joining and staying with the organization. So that's almost like 2 things, but we consider it one. Number 2, regular attendance. Come to work every day. The third one is task performance. That's an important one. Get your job done and do it properly. Next, organizational citizenship. And not many of you would have heard of this, but these are the discretionary behaviors that create community, a better culture, and enhance productivity as well as support for other workers. And the fifth one is not necessarily behavior that we want to motivate, but it's behavior that we want to regulate and discourage, and that is counterproductive behaviors. So that's anything major or minor that causes unhealthy conflict, dampens the vibe in the organization, or just otherwise slows it down. And it's you, the organization, its leaders, people in HR that must consider all of these 5 behaviors when you're motivating people. And the challenge is there's not one motivational technique that motivates all 5 of the behaviors. So you need to think comprehensively. You know, I chuckle sometimes with these professionals who are pumping out content that will say things like, we should stop giving away all of these, silly little perks that we offer, like free beer on Fridays, games rooms, laundry service, stuff like that. We need to stop doing that. It does nothing for the organization. Wrong. It does motivate certain behaviors. Behavior number 1, joining the organization. These things are sexy and they attract people to the organization. So you're motivating potentially people joining the organization. But you must think separately about how to keep them. And you must think separately, especially on how to make sure they perform really well. Twice in my career, I fought for and had approved an across-the-board salary increase because I felt we were not competitive and our retention rates were not as high as I wanted them to be. So what I was trying to motivate was getting people to stay with the organization, and it worked. But the leaders in the company, like the company president, would come to me and they'd be all like, "Well, I don't see people working any harder." And it took a while to explain to them that's not what I was trying to motivate. And they think that anything you do for them is going to cause better task performance. Not necessarily. You have to think about that differently in terms of maybe incentive compensation, bonuses, things like that. All that to say, you will need to learn and deploy a suite of motivational techniques that covers the full range of employee behaviors. In this video, I will help you learn the most common techniques. Then your job is to develop your own style in using these techniques and studying their effectiveness with your team over time. This is one of the reasons why effective leadership is a skill set that takes years to master. All right, enough of that. Let's get going with the tools and techniques, and let's start with the easiest ones to implement. We will refer to this first category as behavior modification, and I will show you two methods. We're going to start super simple with the easiest one, and this must be implemented before you try any of the more challenging ones. It's that box you want to tick, and it is the closest one to what we talked about in the beginning. Just tell people what to do and they will do it, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. We call this goal setting theory, and the steps are as follows. To start off, you must set clear and achievable goals. Neuroscience tells us that we're motivated by goals that we understand, that are challenging, but are also within our reach. Also, you have to set employees up for success. You've got to give them time, direction, resources, sometimes even training to be able to do the job properly. Next, empower them to exercise some judgment over how they go about doing the job. Now, if they like that, not every employee wants that empowerment. Some like to be told what to do. So you need to understand the employee's personality and their self concept. But if they like the empowerment, this is called self determination theory. That's having some control over your job makes it so much more inspiring. Fourth, of course, along the way, you want to monitor and provide feedback. Make sure you're constructive and clear and reinforce their belief that they can do the job whether they are tracking or not. And lastly, and I think this is obvious, reward achievement and also the milestones along the way. I'm going to go deeper into how to think about rewards a little bit later in this video, but for now, just ensure that they exist. You want to establish a relationship between performance and outcomes, not just for the organization, but for the employees themselves. This is how motivation gains momentum. The next method in behavior modification is changing behavior through consequences. And we old people just love this one. There's no more consequences of behavior anymore. But this one's still legit, and it's one of the easiest ones to understand. It's connected to the feedback that you give based on the behaviors that you observe day to day, moment to moment in the workplace. And it's simple things like just giving positive feedback if there's behaviors that you are witnessing and you want to encourage and make sure they repeat, or if there's behaviors that you want to change, you can give some constructive negative feedback. Sometimes the employee is not getting it, so you need to dial up the intensity a little bit. An example of that would be micromanaging. It's a little more obnoxious because you're checking in all the time. You're giving them reminders. You're just ever present in their day. You got to be careful with this one because that behavior can be demotivating. Most of us do not like micromanagers, but it's important that once the employee is earning your trust, you start to withdraw that behavior, and that increases the motivation. So it's one of those techniques, again, as I said, you have to be careful with because you want to have intensity at the right times and you want to withdraw in the right way and at the right pace to lock in those behaviors. So it takes a little bit of practice. The last one is the most dramatic, and that is punishment. This is one you need to use sparingly, and sadly, not everybody does. Some people go straight to punishment, usually with their negative energy. They start yelling at people. I never recommend this. There's no place for that in the workplace. There's almost always a better motivational technique. But sometimes the behavior is so egregious, it's so bad, it's so awful, it's so wrong. You need to do a 180 in their behavior, and you can use your reward systems to do that. The best example I can give you comes from my teaching, and that's if I catch a student cheating. Now, I teach a lot of freshman students, so I've definitely got to change that behavior. A threat to punish them is not enough. So students will say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. Please don't punish me. The punishment is a grade of 0 on whatever the assignment or exam was, plus a report that goes to the dean's office if they cheat a second time or any other academic transgression. There's a notation that goes on their transcript, so it becomes official. Please, sir, I will never do it again. Well, yes, you will never do it again because I'm going to punish you. If I don't, it gets cataloged in your brain that if I do cheat, then I can probably talk myself out of it. And that goes into your subconscious, even though you don't consciously think it. So I can't play that game. A threat is not enough. I have to implement the punishment to lock in that change in behavior. Those are some of the useful day-to-day management tools. Now let's move on. And I kind of like this one because it's a little bit stealth. It doesn't need to be one of the top motivational techniques that you lean on, but sometimes we implement a poor version of this by accident, so we need to be really careful. Let me tell you about social cognitive theory, and it's based on the general idea that employees are not as dumb as we sometimes think they are. You see, employees are paying attention and they're drawing conclusions from what they see, including how people are motivated. So you might say, for example, creativity is essential in this organization for us to achieve our goals. So everybody needs to work on their creativity and demonstrate it. But employees are watching and they're somehow, from their perspective, noticing that the people who are getting rewarded through recognition, through promotions, those sorts of things, are people who suck up to leadership. What they are gonna start doing almost subconsciously is acting that way and be demotivated to work on their creativity to the detriment of the organization. I've had a few conversations about this, not many, with leaders who get frustrated that they feel like they keep saying, "Do this one thing, do this one thing, do X," but they're doing Y, and they can't figure out why. And I show them through behavior modeling that you're actually rewarding different behaviors, and employees are picking up on that. So the best way to get ahead of this is do as we say on this channel and be intentional. Be clear on the behaviors that you're looking for and be consistent. And most importantly, promote and reward and recognize the behaviors when they happen through simple celebrations or through promotions, bonuses, perks, anything that is obvious to other people in the workplace. You will motivate and lock in precisely the behaviors that you want. If you have already been exposed to any motivational theory whatsoever, you might be aware of the terms intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. With intrinsic motivation, the reward is the activity itself. You will be extrinsically motivated if there is some potential for a reward or outcome. Extrinsic motivation also covers the context or the environment of the activity itself. So some people are motivated to play team sports because they love to get exercise and playing the game itself is fun. That's intrinsic to the experience. Some people will only play if there is competition, if there's trophies, recognition, some kind of reward. That's extrinsic. Jobs are the same. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret, so come closer. Extrinsic tools like salary and perks are easy to implement, they're reasonably effective, but they cost a lot of money. The less intrinsically motivating a job is, the more you have to activate extrinsically. I'll show you some research later on in this video that points out, by and large, intrinsic job factors are more motivating to the average employee. The problem is that while they are inexpensive to implement, they do require time and they require expertise. In short story, both of these are in limited supply in most organizations, so leaders will take the unproductive shortcut of prioritizing the extrinsic. Now, if you want to make a job more intrinsically motivating, here's where you need to focus. Now, you can read all the books and white papers and blogs and watch any video on this subject matter. It comes down to these 4 factors. Number 1, freedom and choice. Delegate authority, empower your people, show some trust in them, and give them some control over the structure of their day. Back-to-back meetings, that's not it. Number 2, building competence. If you love to learn and grow, as most people do, you are watching this channel, most employees feel the same. Give them jobs that help them build skills and create assignments that are both challenging and achievable. Third, place some value in bringing meaning to a job. So that doesn't require that you be rescuing puppies and saving the planet. It doesn't have to be that epic. But you can do simple things like connect people to the outcomes of their work. If they do this specialized task that they're doing in some remote office somewhere, show them the impact that they're having in the organization and perhaps on its customers. Have them meet customers if that's possible. You can automate the least valuable tasks in an organization so people can focus on the stuff that's most valuable. But I think what's most important here is have an inspiring vision. Now, here's a pro tip. We often get asked in interviews, when we are the ones being interviewed, what do you expect to be doing in 3 to 5 to 10 years, whatever the time frame is? And we are expected to have a well-crafted, planned out answer. You can play that back to executives if you have access to them through the interview process. Ask them, how is this company going to be making money in 3, 5, or 10 years? You should get a very interesting answer that shows they have a clear vision for the company. If they have a clear vision, They have a clear plan for growth, and that means opportunity for you, and that's exciting. And last, manage for progress. People don't just want to learn, they want to move forward in their careers and in the organization. Even having a great teamwork culture minimizes conflict and doesn't slow the organization down. You can measure performance really well so people are inspired to do better and better. Implement development plans for everybody. Few organizations do this. Everybody should have a development plan for their growth and progress. Foster a career path for them. Even coach people productively on a day-to-day basis. Keep it moving, as we say on this channel. Just those little small steps every day lead to forward progress, and that cultivates momentum and motivation intrinsically. I will even admit I left Warner Brothers due to intrinsic motivation problems. My career was in a great place. I love the organization, the people were wonderful, but the job itself was really starting to suck. So I was a leader of one business unit, and the business was starting to soften overall because digital was coming in and it was sucking some of the profits out of entertainment overall, and our company was affected. So what were they doing? They were expanding my job by I was dealing with the TV business, and then they added video games to my portfolio, but overall profit margins were shrinking, so they cut my staff. What did that result in? I was doing all kinds of lower level tasks. I was pulling data, I was formatting reports, I was creating PowerPoint presentations. I had a lot of different stakeholders in my business because I was doing some licensing. So I found that I was spending so much of my time just moving data around and creating presentations and talking to people about what was going on in the past and what I plan to do in the future. And I actually did the calculation over a couple of weeks of work. And I calculated that I was spending less than one third of my time actually marketing. I was in a marketing role, a senior marketing role. And I was spending two-thirds of my time just moving data around and talking to people. And that was unbelievably demotivating. And the way Warner Brothers is structured is they believe that everybody wants to work for the company. They're going to be intrinsically motivated to do the job. So the extrinsic motivation tools were not in large supply. So my intrinsic motivation went down. There wasn't a lot of extrinsic motivation to keep me there, and I decided to move on. This is what happens in organizations all the time. And in fact, I'd love to hear from any of you who are losing motivation because of the terrible efficiencies, the poor processes in your organization, or maybe you're just focusing on things that you know are not meaningful or valuable. Catch yourself thinking, is there an app for this? There really should be an app for this part of my job so I can work on the stuff that's more fun and inspiring. Please leave a comment if that applies to you. But there really needs to be more support and resources out there to help leaders design more intrinsically motivating jobs because they don't know how to do it or they simply don't want to try. But it is the most untapped motivational tool within organizations, and it is simultaneously the most cost effective. Because of the cost and the potential return, many HR professionals spend a lot of time crafting company-wide policies and benefits to motivate employees extrinsically. These types of rewards are the perks, the incentives, salary, bonuses, and criteria for promotions that employees all covet. Organizational culture is also included in extrinsic motivation. It is contextual to the job. That is its own separate beast. I'm going to cover that in a different video. Extrinsic motivators could be these short-term transactional things like if you work late, we'll bring pizza in, or we can do birthday celebrations. That's a policy of the organization. Or it's the big infrastructural things that do all the heavy lifting to motivate the behaviors that we want. Here is a list of some of the more common motivational tools and tactics. And the genius in any organization is developing the ability to, number one, select the best ones, the best tools that motivate your particular employees. So you really need to get to know your employees as a group and as individuals. And the work that we're doing here on the Mars model will go a long way to helping you with that. You want to set the rewards at the right level to just motivate enough. You can max out employee motivation at a certain level of effort and expenditure. So going beyond that, there is no impact and it's a waste of money and time. So this takes experimentation and it takes a lot of analysis. And importantly, you want the right mix to cover all of the different workplace behaviors you're trying to encourage. So remember, as I said before, each tactic might only incentivize one or two behaviors, and sometimes can even disincentivize. I don't even know if that's a word, but I just made it up. Can disincentivize other behaviors. It gets really complicated. So it takes some time, takes some experimentation, and also, again, some analysis. I want to pause for a minute and go back to OCBs, which are organizational citizenship behaviors. These are powerful behaviors that don't always happen automatically because they represent doing things extra to make the organization a better place to work. An example would be heading up a social committee. Yet these behaviors go such a long way to building the fabric of an organization, building the culture, creating community, and also productivity within an organization. All sorts of things that make a company a better place to work. So I have a solution for you because these are voluntary behaviors and represent doing extra things. I have seen this done in only one place. It's absolutely genius. When I worked at Johnson& and Johnson, this is now like 25 years ago, they built it into the fabric of your performance that you must do OCBs, even though they didn't talk about it as OCBs. So for me, I worked in marketing, and at my level, 20% of my performance evaluation was based on OCB behaviors. And I had to create a plan as a part of my development plan on what I was going to do. The thing that inspired me was to work on recruitment and selection. We had a problem with offer to conversion. So we gave employees a lot of offers, but we didn't necessarily get them to actually join the organization. And we felt that we were not inclusive enough. So I had those two mandates to fix those problems, and I found that inspiring. So they have a list of things that you can choose from. So you can pick anything that you like to do that inspires you. Otherwise, they will assign you something. We had a massive committee in our particular organization. So J&J has a number of operating companies. We would hire about 50 MBAs. So I was doing college graduate recruitment for both MBAs and BBAs. We brought in over 50. That's how many butts in chairs needed to come in. So when you think about the funnel, how many people and how many schools you had to reach out to and interview and offer jobs to get 50 people, it was quite the committee, and we were successful. Someday, maybe in some video, I'll tell you all the wonderful things we did to completely re-engineer the process. I won a major leadership award for it, which I didn't realize was even available. So I got a really nice cash bump and a lot of recognition. It was a part of what drove really high performance evaluation for me because it was baked in to my performance evaluation. And it was hugely motivating. And I kept doing it for a few years because it was so much fun. It was exercising different muscles in my job mentally because I was a marketer and doing a lot of HR stuff. So it actually whet my appetite for a lot of HR functions. And it was completely awesome. The benefits to doing this in an organization, I can't even explain because you don't have to push people to volunteer to do things. It's done automatically because it becomes infrastructural to the performance evaluation system. And it's one of the best things I've ever seen done in an organization. So there's a pro tip that you can benefit from. I would consider implementing that. As I said, the returns are absolutely phenomenal in the behaviors that you get. While those are the four main categories that I want to present to you, there is a bonus category, and it's rare situations when intrinsic and extrinsic motivators come together. And sometimes when that happens, it can be absolutely powerful. So you can use this as a wonderful tool, but it's also dangerous to work with because if you don't manage it properly, you can demotivate people in a big way. The best example that I could share with you that's going on right now is flexible work environments. So hybrid office environments, working from home, flexible hours, those types of things. It's intrinsically motivating because some people like to kind of go with the flow. It suits their lifestyle, their personality, their biorhythms. I know for me, I like to be fluid in how I work, and I do it at different times of the day. It's also extrinsically motivating because there are outcomes. People, because of flexible work environments, might be able to spend more time with their kids. Maybe they're spending less money on gas and the commute and the clothing that they have to buy to be in the office all the time. And there's productivity gains to be had because when you're working from home, let's say, for example, during your breaks, you can run some errands and get some other stuff done. Leaders need to understand this is a delicate situation because we have a perfect storm of extrinsic and intrinsic motivation that has come together with powerful force. And it's not just a matter of, oh, well, we can just go back to the way things were before COVID. Putting forth these offerings, even though it was done under necessity, has created a lot of force and sensitivity within the employees. And this is why you're getting rebellion when we're trying to re-standardize the workplace in terms of work hours and work location. You are demotivating task performance, and as a gift with purchase, you are demotivating any desire to stay with the organization. So there's multiple employee behaviors that are important that are being affected at the same time. Don't be fooled. Just because there's conditions of economic uncertainty right now and employees are kind of staying put, that doesn't mean that they want to. And as soon as conditions permit, they are gone. So be careful. The process of motivating employees oftentimes is like deal making, either in specific situations or for longer periods, such as a full year of employment. Well, you can gauge someone's reception to these deals in one conversation, but the motivation to perform is affected by a number of processes that go on continuously in our minds. And I'm going to highlight two of them that come from the world of academia, but they do operate relentlessly in all of our minds in the workplace every day. The first of these two is called expectancy theory, which is a three-part process that your mind automatically goes through whenever a deal is presented to you. And if there is a breakdown in any one of these three processes, your motivation is compromised. So we're going to use an example of, say, I am your manager, and I tell you that if you put in extra work, you stay late, you take on extra projects, you will get promoted. All right, so I presented that deal to you. Right away, your brain kicks in trying to figure out if you're motivated to accept the deal. And it will go through a three-step process in any order, but oftentimes you will start with number one, how do I feel about the reward? Do I want to get promoted? Most of us do. Not everybody does. Some people don't want their life to be more complicated. They're happy with where they are. They are out. The rest of us are in and going through the rest of the process. The other part of the process is, can I do this? Can I put the effort in? Do I know what to do? Can I do it? Do I want to put the time in and stay extra hours and take on extra projects? So there could be a decision right away on that, or there may be some clarification that you need from your manager about support or tools, or questions about what the extra projects are to make sure that you can check that box and say, yes, I can definitely do this. The third one is more tricky, a little bit more complex, and it's the one we're not thinking about, and it's oftentimes the one that takes down our motivation and we don't see it coming. And that is, you're going to ask yourself, if I do the work and I put the effort in, will I get the reward? Trust is a big part of this. If I'm your manager and I have failed you in the past, I promised you some things and not come through, trust is gone. Immediately, this third component of expectancy theory breaks down and I'm out because I'm not doing any deals with you. There's another element of this third step, and that is, if I do the work, will it be measured properly? So, what are the rules? What specifically are the requirements? So I don't want it to be, for the next 3 or 4 months, I'm staying late and working on this project, but twice a month I leave on time and don't stay late. And then you go, oh, I'm sorry, you don't get the reward. So we want to be really clear on what the rules are, and we want to feel like we're being measured fairly. This is why performance appraisal programs in most organizations fail to motivate people and, in fact, demotivate people because we're like, I do all this work, but then you tell me I did this one thing wrong, and then I don't get the raise, I don't get the bonus, I don't get the A grade that I feel that I deserve, and it's very unfair. So fuck you, I'm going to be over here doing the bare minimum. In summary, make expectancy theory work for you by applying all three steps of the process. Ensure that the reward is valued. Not everybody is the same. You need to get to know your people. Not everybody attaches the same value to the same reward. Set your employee up for success. Don't get in the way you want them to achieve. And thirdly, when everything is done, make sure you evaluate the outcomes fairly and objectively. Any breakdown in any one of these three steps, and you lose the employee, and what's worse, there could be a trust problem in the relationship and difficulty motivating them in the future. If you use this process properly, the next time you cut a deal with them, there's going to be even more force behind their motivation. The second one is a little less involved, and a sign that this process is happening in an employee is when they say, that's not fair. Oftentimes, what's happening is what is known as equity theory, as employees are regularly monitoring for fairness and justice. So, what is equity theory? People compare themselves in the deal, the broader deal they have with the organization. I bring certain things to the table, you give things back to me. They look at what their deal is and they compare it to somebody else. And if they don't think that's fair, they become demotivated. So, this exists on a personal level, this exists on a group level, this exists on even societal levels. An example of societal level is women feeling that they are not properly compensated for doing the same job as a man. So this is not about your agreement with the perspective of women, but the fact is they will become demotivated and disenfranchised if they feel they're not getting the same deal as others. So even though it sounds maybe a little bit petty, especially when we have some situations in the workplace, you have to deal with it because there is a motivational issue. So again, the deal here is your employment relationship. It's about inputs and outputs and comparing your deal with somebody else's. The inputs are things like, Your credentials, your work experience, your skills, your knowledge, anything you bring to the table. Efforts is also included. Your outputs are your salary, your bonuses, your perks, your benefits, recognition, anything you get in return. So once again, we look at what our deal is, we compare it to somebody else. If we don't think it's equal, then we say that's not fair and we are demotivated. Let me give you a simple example from my work history. This is something that is fairly common. I worked for organizations where we would hire new employees at entry level. We would hire bachelor student graduates, and we would hire students who have completed a master's degree. And they're doing essentially the same job, but we're not paying them the same. The MBAs, let's say, get a little bit more. For argument's sake, it's 10,000 more. Eventually, the bachelor students get wind of this somehow, and they come to us and they say, "That's not fair. We're doing the same job. Why are we getting paid $10,000 less? I am now demotivated." The textbooks will acknowledge that there is one way to deal with this, and that is just to say that's the way it is. Suck it up. If you don't like it, leave. That is technically a valid response to this situation, but it's highly demotivating. It's usually the last thing you want to do. The textbooks and I recommend that you take some other steps before you get to that point. Number one, maybe explain to them why a master's credential is more valuable. People have invested in their knowledge and their education. They should get some return back. You can also get them to change what we call their comparison other. So don't compare yourself to a master's student. Make it a little more apples to apples by comparing yourself to a bachelor graduate in another department, and they get paid the same as you. So changing the comparison other is another technique. You can also change the inputs or the outcomes. You can reduce somebody's inputs if they're getting paid less. So we'll say you will need to do less, or you can just say that the MBAs will need to do more. So toggling the inputs and the outputs a little bit is something that you can do to change their perception that something is unfair by making it not exactly the same. So in this case, what we did do in that situation was we did bump the salary of the BBAs just a little bit, but we also did tell them that the MBAs are going to be held to a higher standard. That solved the situation, even though we weren't ultimately paying the bachelor students and the MBAs exactly the same. The last major thing I want to speak to is what works best. And the simple truth of the matter is there's no one right answer. And this is something that you have to learn as a leader and a teammate within your particular organization and with your team. No two companies are the same. No two individual employees are the same. You absolutely need to get to know your people. That's why we're teaching you about the Mars model and all the differences that we have in the components that affect our behavior, including motivation. Need to understand people. Here's a simple example I use with my freshmen. I'll say in class, how many people believe that you have to understand people in order to motivate their performance and manage them well? And you'll get because they think it's the right answer, half the students raise their hand and go, yeah, sure, I'll buy into that. And then I give them a hypothetical situation. I say, okay, pretend you have nowhere that you need to be. You all have time. I'm going to give you a deal. If you stay for 1 extra hour of lecturing, I am going to bring pizza in and we're all going to have free pizza. How many people are up for that deal? And you'll get a number of people who will raise their hands because, of course, people love pizza. And then I'll try that again with like coffee, Amazon gift cards, movie tickets, cold hard cash whatever. And you get different levels of hands coming up. But the students will observe that it's different hands going up each time. And in fact, there were a couple of students who mumbled underneath their breath. It's like, I really love this course. This is a lot of fun. I would just do it for nothing. So there are some people who are, believe it or not, intrinsically motivated to come to some of my classes. Not that many, but there are some for sure. So by the end of it, when we see the different responses from everyone, some people don't drink coffee, some people don't like pizza, some people don't go to movies. Like we all have different habits. And I said again, how many people are willing to believe that you really need to know and understand your people to motivate the best out of their performance? Everybody puts their hands up because they just see it. Quick tests that you can do to show that everybody is different. And so you do need to learn about people to be able to motivate them. So how do we do that? How do we get to know people? Well, there's actually 3 ways. The first is informally, just ask people questions. Be curious about people, whether they're on your team, whether they're anybody else in the organization. You will just automatically over time figure out what makes them tick. You can do something more formal, like research. Internally, you can poll and do research on your own employees, or you can do external research, competitive analysis, academic white papers. There's companies out there like Mintel. I was just sitting on one of their webinars a few days ago on just basically what's going on in the world and what's changing with people. And that has a tangential relationship to how they would be motivated. And the third is to just test and learn. Try the pizza. If the pizza doesn't work, try the coffee. If the coffee doesn't work, try the cold hard cash. Do different deals and see what the response is. If you actively and consistently work all these three different areas over time, you will become a supreme motivator. A few things I will share. The first is a video that is more than a dozen years old, but it's a good listen. It's a TED Talk from bestselling author Daniel Pink, who has published extensively on the power of the mind. Much of this video is his discovery of intrinsic motivation, which is still an aha for many people out there in the business world. But he has a few additional nuggets of wisdom, including some research on how the mind reacts to the size of the reward. If the reward is too big, then our brain gets a little dysfunctional, so just enough is optimal for focus and performance. An example that I'll give you from one of the classes that I teach, Emerging Issues in Marketing. It's all the coolest stuff that's happening now in marketing. I do one lecture on creativity, and I include this activity. Really simple. And you can use this one actually if you ever want to jumpstart people into thinking creatively for a bigger creative exercise. It's a fun little thing that you can do in 5 minutes. It's simply this. I break up the class into small teams, 3 or 4 people, give them their own space so they're not sitting too close to each other. And then I take an everyday object like a pen or, in the case of the last class, I did a rubber band and have them in 5 minutes, they are timed, come up with as many uses, alternative uses for that simple everyday item as they can. They go nuts. It's worth 1% extra credit. And what I'm doing here is I guess I'm being a little bit crafty because I'm bridging intrinsic motivation of having this little competitive game that's fun to do with just enough extrinsic motivation, that 1% reward. Like I say, they go nuts. They're highly competitive. They have a lot of fun with it. It brings a lot of energy to the class. Yet I'm doing this tiny little benign activity that is just enough. And the motivation, sky high. The other revelation I want to share is known as Hertzberg's two-factor motivational theory. Motivational tools are grouped into 2 categories, motivators and demotivators. The motivators can substantially motivate employees if implemented, but if they are not, they don't demotivate all that much. And you will note that these tend to be variables that are more intrinsic to the job. Demotivators are destructive when not in place, but they motivate not much more than a token amount when they are in place. For the most part, these are extrinsic factors such as job context and monetary incentives. So we have one set in green that has a lot of upside, and we have another set in red that is all about the downside. Your upside to motivate employees lies mostly in the factors that are most intrinsic to the job. And I guess that stands to reason. We want to enjoy what we're doing on a day-to-day basis all day before we start to get too concerned about what's going on in our environment. The journey to become an effective motivational leader is a 2-stage process, and today we're focusing more on the first stage, and that's the learning. I want to encourage you to get to know people, and I want to present you at the same time with a package of motivational tactics that you can use to inspire action. The second phase is all about you gaining experience applying these tools and having success with them, but that takes time and trial and error. Eventually, everything I taught you today will just absorb into your subconscious for you to draw from seamlessly and at will. Your skills will naturally advance if you just learn, practice, rinse and repeat. Do as we say on this channel, keep the process moving, and the results will come. So until I see you next time, have a spectacular day and stand by. This 5 out of 10 face is going to continue yapping on more ways that you can navigate careers and companies in videos to come. See you next time.